Everyone laughed at him, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to remind him he was invisible, and none of them knew. The quiet janitor standing outside that glass conference room was about to expose a mistake that could cost the company millions. This isn't a story about revenge. No yelling, no dramatic gotcha moment. Just one sentence spoken softly, and a room full of important people suddenly realizing they had been blind for years. Stay with me, because the most powerful lesson in this story isn't about numbers. It's about respect. Daniel worked the night shift. While the city slept, he walked empty hallways with a cart that squeaked like a secret. The building was beautiful. Glass walls, white floors, soft lighting that made everything look expensive, even silence. Daniel didn't belong in that shine, at least not in the way the day people thought. To them, he was just the janitor, a man in a blue uniform with slightly hunched shoulders and hands that always smelled faintly like lemon cleaner. Every night, he wiped fingerprints off doors that powerful people had pushed open without thinking. He emptied trash cans full of half-finished coffees and printed spreadsheets that said things like growth and targets and expansion. Sometimes he found sticky notes in the bins. Cut costs. Push harder. Fire him? Daniel would read them, then throw them away gently, like they were fragile lies. He didn't talk much, not because he couldn't, but because years ago, he learned what happens when you speak in places that don't want your voice. The daytime employees barely looked at him. They walked past him mid-conversation, laughing at inside jokes, arguing about meetings, complaining about traffic, and never once wondering who made their office clean enough to feel like success. Daniel used to say, "Good morning." At first, some people nodded. Then time passed. New employees arrived. People got busier. Eventually, Daniel stopped saying it, because greeting someone who never answers back starts to feel like begging. And Daniel didn't beg. He just worked, quietly, consistently, like a man who had accepted that the world had ranked him and decided he would still keep his dignity anyway. On a Thursday afternoon, something changed. A big meeting ran late. Later than usual, Daniel had been told to wait. Conference room B after they finish. So he waited outside the glass walls with his mop and his caution sign. Inside, executives sat around a long table, faces lit by laptop screens, voices tight like wires. A merger deal was on the line, a property purchase, a decision with so many zeros that one mistake could ruin someone's career. Daniel didn't mean to listen, but it's hard not to hear things when your job is to exist quietly near important rooms. Through the glass, he caught pieces. Revenue projection, quarterly shortfall, marketing spend, operational costs. One executive kept tapping a pen like a heartbeat. Another said, "If we don't fix this today, we're dead." Then the door opened. A manager stepped out. Phone pressed to his ear, and when he saw Daniel, he sighed like Daniel was a problem. "Will be another 15 minutes, he said. "No, sorry. No, thanks. Just instruction." Daniel nodded. The manager turned back inside, and as he walked away, Daniel heard him whisper to the others, "Dude, I swear, he's always just standing there." A few people laughed. Not screaming laughter. Not mean laughter. That kind of laughter that says, "We're above you, and we don't even have to admit it." Daniel felt heat rise in his neck. Then he swallowed it, because he had swallowed worse. Minutes passed. 15 became 30. Then a sharp sound. Someone slammed their laptop shut. A woman's voice cut through the room. "These numbers are wrong," she said. "I've checked 3 times. They don't reconcile." Silence. People leaned in. Hands moved quickly across keyboards. Screens were compared. Spreadsheets reopened. A man near the end of the table muttered, "If we present this to the board, we're finished." Daniel's eyes drifted to the whiteboard inside the room. A column of numbers was written there, big, bold, confident, as if writing it made it true. And Daniel noticed something. A small error. A single line. A decimal placed like a landmine. He hesitated, because speaking in that room felt like walking onto a stage naked. He thought of the laughter. He thought of the way people looked through him. He thought, I'm not supposed to talk here. But then he thought of something else. He thought of the cleaning supplies closet where he'd once eaten dinner alone. He thought of the rent notice at home. He thought of how one wrong decision by people who never looked at him could cost hundreds of workers their jobs. And he realized something. This wasn't about pride. This was about responsibility. So Daniel stepped inside. The room didn't notice him at first. They were too busy panicking. He stood near the board, quiet, respectful. Then he spoke, softly, like he was asking permission. I think I know why the numbers don't match. The room froze. Every head turned slowly, as if someone had just spoken from the ceiling. A man in a tailored suit blinked. You... what? He said. A different manager, the one who laughed, let out a small chuckle. We're kind of in the middle of something, he said, like Daniel was a child wandering into traffic. Daniel nodded once. I know, he said. I'm sorry. The woman who slammed her laptop stared at him. Why do you think you know? She asked. Daniel swallowed. Because the expense line, here, he pointed gently, was entered as 1.8, but the invoice, based on what I heard, was 18.0. The manager scoffed. That's not it. Daniel didn't argue. He just walked to the board. He picked up the marker with 2 fingers as if it might burn him, and he corrected one number, 1 dot, 1 decimal. Then he stepped back. Try it now, he said quietly. For a second, no one moved. Then the woman turned to her laptop. She typed. Her brow furrowed, then her eyes widened. She checked again. Then she let out a breath she'd been holding for an hour. It works, she whispered. Someone else recalculated. It balances, another voice said, stunned. A man in the corner said, How did we miss that? No one laughed now. The manager, who had laughed earlier, stared down at the table like the wood grain suddenly mattered. Daniel didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stood there. Quiet. The woman looked at him with something new in her eyes. Not pity, not politeness, recognition. What's your name? She asked. Daniel hesitated, then answered. Daniel. And how do you know about accounting? She asked, softer now. The room leaned in. Daniel's hand tightened around the marker. I studied it, he said. A long time ago. Where? Someone asked. Daniel paused, because the truth was complicated, and he didn't want sympathy, but he also didn't want to lie. Community college, he said. I was close to finishing. What happened? The woman asked. Daniel looked down at his shoes. My mom got sick, he said simply. So I worked. Then I kept working. And time did what time does. No one spoke, because suddenly Daniel wasn't the janitor. He was a person with a past, a person with intelligence, a person with sacrifice written into his silence. Daniel placed the marker down carefully. I didn't mean to interrupt, he said. I just thought it mattered. Then he picked up his mop, and before anyone could figure out what to say, he walked out of the room. That's the moment the silence started to hurt. Because the silence wasn't empty anymore. It was full of regret, full of the question nobody wanted to ask out loud. How many people have we ignored who could have helped us if we'd treated them like human beings? The next day, something shifted. People said, good morning, not out of guilt, out of awareness. A few employees stopped Daniel to ask his opinion, like they were still testing reality. The manager who laughed avoided him for a week. Then one evening, he approached Daniel by the elevator. Hey, he said awkwardly, about yesterday. Daniel waited. The manager's voice dropped. I didn't know, he admitted. Daniel gave a small, tired smile. "You never asked," he said. A week later, the woman executive called Daniel into her office. She didn't offer charity. She offered opportunity, a part-time junior role in finance, training, a real path. Daniel stared at the offer letter like it was written in another language. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. She leaned back and said the simplest truth. "Because we were wrong about you," she said. "And I don't want to be that kind of person anymore." Daniel nodded, and for the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't mop off the floor. Hope. Some people speak quietly because life taught them silence was safer, not because they lack value, not because they lack wisdom, but because the world never made room for their voice. So if there's one lesson in this story, it's this. Don't measure people by their job title. Measure them by their character. If this story made you feel something, tap like. Subscribe for more life-changing stories, and tell me in the comments, have you ever underestimated someone and later regretted it?